Illegal shift. Offense. That penalty is declined. The result of the play is a touchdown.
Oh, baby, fire up the DB boom box and get that turnover dance going. Huskers score on a pick six by Bullard.
Now, here's Tom Stevens and Mike Melby on 1499.3 KLIN.
It's usually over here.
That's the straight from.
Oh, in there?
No, it's the straight from little stuff.
Yeah.
The hardest part of what we did when we went to Temple and what we did when we went to Baylor was getting guys not to say, oh, here we go again, and getting guys not to expect to lose. Getting everyone, including the people around the program, not to focus on always on what's wrong, but what's right, right? And that's hard, right? You're constantly talking to your staff, your coaches, your players. Last week was a low for us since we've been here. Because the minute the game got hard, we kind of looked around like, oh no, what's happening to us? Kind of victims, like, yeah, this is happening to us. And this was a hard week. But a week that I knew, because of my experiences, we would turn into something good. We would teach. The players would see us, instead of us being defensive as things are said, they would see us stand like men. You know, anyone can just be defensive. Like, just stand like men in front of them, not blame the players, but work hand in hand with them. And we expected to come here and win the football game. We expected to win. And so I say this, to me, it's so hard because you don't want it to sound like a moral victory because we lost. And we're not here to lose. We're the University of Nebraska. We're not here to lose. But in terms of the development and growth of what you're trying to build, because while the world and everyone wants things to happen quickly, if you want it to be sustainable, if you want it to last forever, you have to do it the right way.
There's Matt Rule following Nebraska's 21-17 loss to number 4 Ohio State in Columbus. Ohio State, of course, a 25-point favorite in that ball game. Nebraska had the lead 17-14 late, but couldn't finish it off. Ohio State gets a late touchdown. Dylan Raiola throws a late interception, and Nebraska loses their 27th straight game to a ranked opponent. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. Husker Rewind every Sunday from 5 to 7. Big show tonight. But what did you make of that statement from Matt Rule?
It was interesting. There was one sentence that you didn't play out of it that I guess struck me as in a very odd tone during that 3-minute 56 seconds opening statement. He says, quote, I get asked a lot of questions about why are we doing this? Why are we not doing it that way? I'm trying to build something sustainable. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't.
Yeah.
Who knows? And that didn't sound like a man full of confidence that his plan is going to work. Now, I get everything else he said.
Yeah.
Makes it sound like he believes it, but that, like, replace who knows with, and maybe it will, maybe it won't, with I firmly believe what we're doing is going, and he's always said that.
Right.
This is the first time I've ever heard him suggest
that it may not work. Yeah, I think it's this comment from Matt Rule.
I think I've been pretty consistent in saying, to you guys, I think the guys do a great job during the week. It's getting to these moments and saying, here we go again. I'm just, again, I don't want anyone to take anything I say the wrong way, because everything I say is with peace and love. But when they haven't won, and then the commentary around them is always pretty like, hey, this isn't good enough. They're in a culture where all they hear is like, this isn't good enough. And so how do you get them through that? You push them through that. It's just what it is. Like, you push them through that. And so we always work hard. I've never had a time where I thought the guys didn't work hard. But I thought they went out there. I mean, the game couldn't have started any worse. I mean, it's like, holy smokes. And the defense took the field like last year and said, let's go get a stop. They got to stop. But I thought it was before the game, and I thought it was at halftime. Really, at halftime, I told them. Because last week I said some different things to them at halftime. And this week at halftime, I said, this is what it's supposed to look like. If I start worrying about the results only, and you had a coach, you had Coach Osborne, who all he talked about was the process and not the results. I mean, everybody knows what it's supposed to look like. Coach Osborne taught us. He showed us. Like, worry about the process. And so to me, the way it felt at halftime was the process. Like they were excited to get back out there and play. They were not like, oh man, I can't believe I can't believe they called OP offensive pass interference on that. They weren't worried about that, which a lot of times our guys are worried about. You always got me saying like, just play. What's next? Just play. What's next? And so I felt like a lot of the things we talk about took hold today.
That was not the comment that you were referring to, that maybe this will work. But it did remind me of something that Tom Osborne once said after 7 straight bowl losses. I think they had lost to Georgia Tech.
45-10.
45-10. That was, I think, 1991. Georgia Tech split the national title with
Citrus
Colorado.
Bowl, I think.
Split it with Colorado that year. So
Five down Colorado.
Yeah, that's right. Colorado had to cheat to win a national title, but they cheat to win everything. So that's. But I remember him recruiting that class that I believe included Tommy Frazier, and talking to the media and sounding a little resigned. Like you never heard a lot of pessimism from Tom Osborne. It was usually just bland. But he said, this is the best we could do in recruiting. He was talking about recruiting. But he had been beaten down by 7 years of not winning a bowl game, but continued with the process. And Matt Rule talked about the process, and he's talked a lot of it because of Tom Osborne. He said he called Tom Osborne this week. Frank Solich and Tom Osborne were at practice, and said that's what he's trying to focus on, is the process and not the results. But it's pretty tough when you're living in the nightmare of Nebraska football that we've all lived in since Frank Solich left town. And
since the 62-36 loss to Colorado.
But that
was the game.
And they played for the national title that year.
They didn't deserve it, but they did.
They did.
And they got boat raced by Miami,
right.
But still.
But Frank was 59-19 or whatever it was, and got fired. And it has, some people call it the Frank Solich curse, but they've never recovered from it. But it's always been, Bill Callahan promising great things, or obviously Bo Pelini had it rolling for a while with 9-3. Mike Riley's, it certainly didn't work out with Mike Riley. It didn't work out with a sure thing, Scott Frost, and now we're hoping it works out again. And it's easy for the negativity to slip in. I think more than anything else, Matt Rule is fighting a disbelief, a belief that, man, I don't know if we can do it because we haven't done it. And I don't know if we're ever going to do it.
Do you believe that he's going to succeed, or do you hope that he succeeds?
I believe he's going to succeed.
And I hope he does.
So you're on the other side of the fence.
I'm not saying he's not going to.
Well, let's talk about that.
I just need some proof.
Well, we have 2 hours to talk about it. But in the meantime, John Bishop will be on the show in the first hour, Tanya Taki, and then BC, Brian Christopherson, in the second hour, who will talk not only football, but hoops. Nebraska hoops began today, an exhibition win, 73-53 over Grand Valley State. Woohoo! They're a Division 2 team, not very good. But Nebraska gets the victory today. Obviously, it's a growing thing, and they've got a long ways to go. But I like some of the things I saw. We'll talk a little hoops in hour number 2 with BC. But right now, the opening kickoff.
Now the opening kickoff on Husker Rewind.
Niles coming over at the goal line. A yard deep, he's coming out. Ball to the 10, 15, he's got a seam, 20, 30, down the near boundary, 40, Niles cuts back, 50, 40, 35, 30, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Niles, Paul with a 101 yard.
So for Nebraska football, it was another Groundhog Day game. They fall 21-17 to fourth-ranked Ohio State in Columbus yesterday. Blown opportunities, poor decisions, and dumb penalties at crucial times, failure to execute under pressure, poor play calling, and a defense that can dominate all game other than when they need to late in the game to get a win.
But other than that, they were really good.
And bad officiating.
Wow. Was,
yeah, sorry, I'm on the negative train with this. It's just, like I said, I'm hoping that they're going to change, but I'm tired of watching this. It's beyond frustrating. Next up is UCLA. They're horrible. Anything less than a 20-plus point win, I think, is going to be a disappointment.
Well, UCLA is coming off a bye, whereas Nebraska played this week. So that will be a little – I mean, UCLA hasn't gotten blown out a lot. They did by Indiana, and Indiana's blowing out everybody. But they haven't been blown out a lot this year. They've been in a lot of close games.
That bye, to me, doesn't help UCLA as much as normal based on the way Nebraska played against Ohio State. I think they have some belief now. I think they always I mean, I'm never going to argue that Ty Robinson doesn't believe this team can win every single game every time it steps on the field.
You have to win that game next week, because if you don't, man, the pressure to beat Wisconsin, and obviously USC, that's going to be an uphill climb. Going to USC, they get a bye after UCLA, but then it's USC, it's Wisconsin, and then finishing the season against Iowa. And those are all pretty good teams. They're Big Ten. They're tough Big Ten teams.
Yeah, but like from my standpoint, with the way Nebraska played in a game, they were expected to get blown out by everybody but themselves. They hung with them. They went toe-to-toe. They failed. It is what it is. Just, I mean, bottom line, did they win the game? No. So they failed to win the game.
But they were the largest underdog in college football this past Saturday. And they lost by 4 to the number 4 team in the country.
But I think if they take out of that game what I believe Matt Rule is hoping they take out of that game, I don't think that bye week for UCLA is an advantage. I think the way Nebraska played against Ohio State is an advantage to Nebraska. And I'm hoping they build on it. I'm hoping that they win by 20, 30, 50. Yeah. I don't care, but dominate. Go out and do something you haven't done in a while. That would
be so nice.
Nebraska volleyball sits at 20-1 following home wins on Friday and Saturday this weekend. 3-0 on Friday over Illinois, 3-1 over Michigan yesterday. They lost the first set, came back and swept them after that. The game that many circled early in the season is up next Friday night up in Madison, Wisconsin. Huskers take on Kelly Sheffield and the Wisconsin Badgers. Anna Smirk is back for what I believe is her 412th season of college volleyball. Nebraska basketball took on Grand Valley State, as you mentioned earlier, 73-53 the win. Played not great, but it kind of what you would expect, discombobulated. It's going to be lineups that'll probably not see the floor very often, trying to mix and match and see who's good, see who's not. We'll talk more about this a little bit later on. They kick off the regular season against Texas Rio Grande Valley. According to Kent Pavelka, it's Grande, not Rio Grande Valley. But there was a big discussion on the radio podcast about it.
I didn't have that debate in my head.
I didn't either, but Kent did, and he said he looked it up, and it's Texas
Grande.
Rio Grande.
There is an
Valley.
E on the end.
To
defend Kent.
So he might be right. The one concerning thing, and I want to get into this with you. You were at the game today. 14 offensive rebounds given up by Nebraska. That is alarming considering the size we have. College football yesterday, number 14 Texas A&M knocked off number 8 LSU 38-23. Notre Dame ended the unbeaten season for Navy. They dominate the midshipmen 51-14, and number 15 Alabama rolled Missouri 34-rip. Earlier this afternoon in college football, Rice fired head football coach Mike Bloomgren, and you got to say, since the day he took that Rice job 6.5 years ago, Stanford, which is where he was, has completely fallen off the map. Bloomgren was in his 7th season at the helm of the Owls. Rice is sitting at 2-6 after a 17-10 loss to UConn yesterday. Pete Alomar will take over as the interim coach, and that'll wrap up Husker Rewind's version of the opening kickoff.
There you go. We tried to get you through Husker headlines, and that's what Mike just did there to start the show. Big show, as we mentioned. John Bishop, who is the voice of Creighton basketball, will join us, but he also talks a lot of Husker football on 1620 The Zone, where he is the host of Unsportsmanlike Conduct. But Creighton looks really pretty good. Big surprise. They're 15th in the country, but they blew out Purdue in a charity exhibition game at the CHI Center in Omaha yesterday. So if you thought Creighton might fall, they probably won't. They're going to be really, really good. And Nebraska, of course, plays Creighton this year. We have the Big Ten Blitz. We'll go through and rank every single team. We'll do that. We'll talk a little bit about, in fact, this might be a good place to do it. Matt Rule, who likes to speak to his team through the media, did so in a speech, talking about how, no, it's not good enough, and there is no such thing as a moral victory. But hey, we went into a place where we haven't had a lot of success. Nebraska's beaten Ohio State one time in their whole history.
The greatest comeback in Nebraska football history in 2011.
They won that game behind Pittsburgh
and Taylor Martinez.
34-27, but they were way down in that game, came back and won that game. And of course, that's where the Bo Pelini tape came from. where he went ballistic in the locker room with Greg Sharp, and that tape was eventually leaked that said bleep the bleeping fans. I think that's
that's
quote.
a direct quote. That was the game Levante David stripped the ball away from Braxton Miller, and on that play, Miller actually twisted his ankle. And I mean, honest to God, that's the absolute only reason Nebraska came back and won that game, was because of Levante David's play and the fact that Braxton Miller was out for the rest of the game.
And Ohio State, quite frankly, was not a good team that year.
Not
Luke
a great
Fickell
team. They were good.
Luke Fickell
that was the Luke Fickell
that was the
season.
Luke Fickell season where Tressel steps down because of Tattoo Gate. And so Luke Fickell had to take the gig, and Ohio State was not very good. Braxton Miller was okay, but once he left the game in that situation, of course, Levante David makes the big hit, and then the momentum swung. And since then, Nebraska hasn't had a lot of success against Ohio State. There was that one year, I believe the freshman year of Adrian Martinez, where they had a chance to win that game and did some silly things to kind of similar to this. It felt kind of similar to this past weekend.
Hence my Groundhog Day statement earlier.
But I think there were some good things to come out of it. I really do.
Well, there were, but at the same time, they lost the game.
They lost the game. And again, there are no moral victories, but there was a real concern for me last week after losing to Indiana 56-7, that this team just might mail it in, because it looked at times like they mailed it in against Indiana. After some big wins early on, including Colorado, it didn't look good against Illinois. So they've had this flow to the season where you don't always know, even defensively, as good as Nebraska has been defensively, what defense will show up. Well, they showed up. So I don't have the confidence necessarily that they would have had it been another coach, either Mike Riley or Scott Frost. It felt like once they mailed it in a season, Nebraska mailed it in. They didn't this week. And now Matt Rule did say, hey, if we don't show up this week against UCLA, it's all for naught.
And it's all on him.
And it's all on him, but he's taking that ownership of it. I don't see him blaming players. How many times have we heard coaches in the past say it's execution? And when they say execution, what they're really saying is the players didn't play well enough.
Yeah, and that was Scott Frost's MO almost every post game. So,
and I haven't heard he broached that subject in the post game, saying, you know how hard it is sometimes to come up here and not point a finger. And he says, I really try hard to never, ever do that. And I don't remember many times when he does. He does point the finger at himself. He had an apology for the fans last week after that loss to Indiana. He apologized to the fan base. He said he was embarrassed. He did say this week, after losing to Ohio State and having a chance to win, that he was proud of the team. And again, no moral victories, but there was a chance for him to go ballistic, especially with the officials. The officials in the Big Ten are terrible. And I don't know why you can't get this fixed.
Yeah, and I know Nebraska fans like to say that the Big Ten's out to get them, and it's always against Nebraska. Go watch any Big Ten game. I get it. Nebraska's on the short end of the stick more than our opponents are of really bad calls. I don't disagree with that. But watch any Big Ten game.
But it's got to stop.
It literally, there's times that some of these games look like you have got guys and gals that have been refereeing or officiating at a junior high level for the last, 6 weeks, and they just got promoted. Like they have no complete understanding of the game, or I don't know. But
as long as we're here,
the Big Ten is awful.
How hard would it be, Mike, to have somebody watch a TV, not even watch the game in the booth, just watch TV in the booth, and every time they know, because we know as fans when they've gotten it wrong, buzz them down or just say, hey, Phil, you screwed up again. That ball should have been marked 3 yards ahead. Emmett Johnson had a first down. They saw another Husker player fall down behind the line of scrimmage and thought that he was the ball carrier. They moved it back 2 yards. Emmett not only got the first down, he got the first down by 2 yards. That was egregious.
Yeah.
And really what Matt Rule should have done is throw a challenge flag, and he could have done that, and they would have stopped the clock because they review whether or not it's first down all the time. They do that in college football all the time. He was probably a little concerned about losing his timeouts, knowing you're playing Ohio State. You might need those at the end of the game. He didn't challenge
this is first half, though.
This is the first half.
And there's 30 seconds to go. I mean, you got to use the timeouts anyway. And if you challenge and win, you don't lose the timeout.
Yeah.
That's
ended
a
up
mistake on his part.
And before even that, there was a pass interference called on Nebraska that would have moved the ball way down the field. There were so many calls that I think could be corrected by, again, somebody sitting up there watching a monitor and saying, hey, knuckleheads, you blew it. Let's get the call. What isn't it just the most important thing just to get the call right? Why do we have to say you can't review that because we can't review that?
Well, let me throw this out to you then. Take it the next step. The officials on the field have no say in anything. They literally, all of them have an earpiece, and they have their own person that is telling them what they are watching.
I'm a fan. I'm already a fan of that.
Yeah. I'm not going to, I'm like, that doesn't sound like
You're looking at the guy who wants to get rid of the home plate umpire in baseball. I have for a long time. You have a little square that says whether or not it's a ball or strike, and you can make calls at home plate, whether it's out or not, whether the guy is out or not, based on the video as well. There's no game that isn't videotaped or that isn't on camera, that isn't available for the officials to review. I just don't understand how in this day and age the calls are this egregious. And I guarantee you, the officials want it right. I think they would be happy if somebody were looking out for them to make sure that they can keep their job next year. Because guys do get fired based on those lousy calls. And I just think it's an easy, correctable thing. Have a guy in the booth, watch the video, buzz down when they get it wrong, and then get it right. There you go.
I'd like it.
Well, Mike likes something that I've said. That's good. We'll see if John Bishop feels the same way. You know, his Rams beat my Vikings the other night on Thursday Night Football. Last week, or a couple of weeks ago when we had Bishop on, very entertaining when they played the 49ers. He was yelling into the phone and trying to do an interview and yelling into the phone at the same time while watching his Rams win that game. They did beat the Rams, and then they came back and beat my Vikings as well. So we'll see how he reacts to winning that Thursday night game against the Vikings and how he reacts after Nebraska's victory. That was not a victory. They lose it 21-17. Had maybe a game that they should have won, but did not. John Bishop of 1620 The Zone, and of course the voice of Creighton basketball is coming up next.
The following bulletin is paid for by Retired Americans PAC. Dateline Omaha. Election Day 2024. Nebraskans head to the polls. Hundreds of thousands of them rely on the Social Security and Medicare they earned. Do they know Senator Deb Fischer voted to raise the Social Security retirement age, cut benefits, and slash Medicare? That she voted against capping insulin costs at $35? Nebraska's seniors are asking, who will fight for our financial security and the benefits we paid for? Dan Osborne, veteran, works for a living, independent candidate for U.S. Senate. Unlike Deb Fischer, he's not funded by the drug lobby and big corporations. On November 5th, it's your turn to vote to protect Social Security and Medicare. Vote Dan Osborne. Retired Americans PAC paid and is responsible for the content of this advertising. RetiredAmericansPAC.org. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
This holiday season, Centerpoint is hosting a Winter Essentials donation drive, and we need your help. Support your community members in need by donating new or gently used winter essentials. Drop off coats, hats, gloves, blankets, and more at Centerpoint Campus for Health and Wellbeing, located at 2202 South 11th Street. Join Centerpoint in warming the hearts and lives of Lincoln this winter. For more information on needed items and drop-off hours, visit centerpoint.org. That's centerpoint with an E.org.
Be part of something special this holiday season. Nominate a friend, neighbor, or family member in need of some extra cheer to receive a magic moment. Union Bank and Trust is crafting joyful holiday experiences just for them. Leading up to the Christmas holiday, 10 wishes will be granted to deserving community members. Make your nomination through November 17th. Get started by visiting ubt.com/magic moments. Help grant an unforgettable magic moment this holiday season with Union Bank and Trust, member FDIC.
At Elder Jewelry, they believe that
It is
everyone
bad
should be
radio.
able to afford a beautiful diamond. That's why they offer the
Right.
quality
I've
diamond.
got 6 running backs. Pick
Their
one.
diamonds
Pick
are
2.
selected by their expert gemologists and are guaranteed to be conflict-free. They
Right,
also offer
right.
financing options
All
to
right,
fit any
we'll be
budget.
on here in a
With
minute.
approved credit,
Hang
get
on.
no interest financing on jewelry, watches, pendants, wedding rings, and engagement
All right, you can
rings.
take it.
Discover the difference that quality and affordability can make. Elder Jewelry, 29th and Pine Lake Road.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated in the best hearing aids of 2024 by USA Today, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, just $189.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aids.
I could
I've
not
got
believe
Jordan Love for the second time this year. Who went
Join
down.
over 500,000 happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN hearing.com.
Husker Rewind with
1379.
with a combined 60-plus years of broadcasting experience. Huh, I guess that means they're really old.
They're going to make him do this till he's 90.
Here's Tom Stevens and Mike
You want to take
Melvin.
it?
1499.3 KLIN.
Welcome back.
I am Mike. That is Mr. Thomas Stevens.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Husker Rewind on 1400 KLIN 99.3. On the Hunt Irrigation Talk and Text line, joining us now, one of the legends in radio in Nebraska,
Wow.
Mr. John Bishop.
Wow, legend. I just heard that drop about 60 years of broadcast experience, so now we're pushing 100.
Wow.
Yep. Holy crap, we're all really old.
Where's my prune juice?
We are really old, which means this whole segment's going to be, back in my day, Nebraska would have never thrown screen passes on every other play. We just would have run the ball, and it would have worked.
That's right. And it did work for a while. They did run the ball effectively in that game. They outgained, I think, Ohio State 80-20, something like that in the third quarter. It looked like they may win finally, but you always figure, you've seen this movie too many times. Did you really think Nebraska was going to win that game?
There was a moment where I thought it was possible. I really did. When they took the lead, and but just how they were playing defense, I thought, okay, I'm actually going to allow it. And I had a stat from someone I follow who follows me on Twitter, and we were trying to look up, how many times has Nebraska won a game as a 20-point underdog, and it's only happened twice, according to his records, which go like way back to the 30s. So apparently he was getting his point spreads from Guido in the Bronx, but it had only happened twice. And so as soon as that happened, I tweeted that factoid out again. I'm like, this could actually happen. But, then Ohio State, got the drive. They actually sustained one drive in the second half. Still, though, I thought there was a chance. I just thought, there was they needed a play. They just needed to make a play. And unfortunately, you get that last possession, and, once you get an advantage and forget about how everything got so screwy there on that targeting, no targeting, fumble, no fumble, sideline or, unsportsmanlike conduct, no unsportsmanlike conduct. The fact that they had the ball near midfield, and then the very next play, they get a 5-yard penalty, and it just backs them up. And I thought, okay, they're doing it again. It just seems to happen. It takes sometimes just one mistake, and it throws them completely off of their game. And it died. But yeah, for a fleeting moment there, I thought they got a chance.
Okay, Bishop, I want to ask you when that moment was. Was it immediately after the kickoff where you're like, you know what, the way the defense is playing right here, all they got, they don't need a 3 and out. They just need to not give up a big play and, stop them before midfield. Even if it's a field goal and it ties the game, all they have to do, and then one play into that drive, 38-yard completion for Will Howard, and I immediately went, done. Was that the time for you?
No, I still thought that they had a chance there at the end. I thought maybe someone could make a play. Maybe I'm just, too much of an optimist, even though that's completely against my nature most of the time, being a lifelong Cubs fan. But that game had a weirdness about it, and the thing I'm most worried about was that one of the ridiculous officiating calls was going to decide the game. And sure, you can go back and point at about a dozen of those different things that happened that had an impact on the game. I'm just grateful that on the last drive, even though they botched that one series, that it didn't come down to that. But it was a really, really weird game. But I got to say, we're not doing the whole, moral victories thing, but the fact that they fought back like that and they didn't give in when they went down 14-3, you could just kind of feel, okay, here's where the dam breaks, and it never did. So, from that standpoint, I came away from it encouraged.
John Bishop, the voice of Creighton Hoops in baseball and host of 1620 The Zone's Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Matt Rule has a way of speaking to his team through the media. He kind of did it with, hey, there are no moral victories, but I'm proud of this team, and was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to accomplish. What do you think he was trying to accomplish with his State of the Union speech after that game?
I mean, I think he was responding to a lot of the stuff that had transpired over the last week, and some of it was, mostly defending his players, but honestly, probably partially defending some of his decisions, like, certain coaches that are on the staff, because I think he knew before he walked into that room that the heat was going to be on Marcus Satterfield after that, because when you throw that many times and you can't gain yards consistently, the play calling was erratic, you knew that there was going to be heat on him. So I think some of it was also directed in that direction, because right now his primary focus is just get us the 6th win. And he doesn't want anything distracting from it right now. And there's going to be enough noise made this week about Satterfield and his play calling and everything that's gone wrong, that I think that's a lot of where it came from. But I also think he was proud. I mean, he was proud that the team fought back like that and played it as hard as they did. It was an interesting 4 minutes, I'll say, because I didn't get a chance to hear it until after I got back from the Creighton exhibition game last night. I didn't listen to any of the post game right after. And so I had some time to kind of marinate and think a little bit about the game and, how it transpired. And so hearing it as late as I did, it was, I don't want to come across too cheesy here, but it was kind of inspiring. I mean, he said a lot of the things that I think fans wanted to hear, about, hey, this process, this kind of a process, if you build it right, if you build it, with hard work, that it pays off, but it takes time. And you could just hear there were certain, things in that 4 minute long message. And then even in some of the subsequent answers that, was, dare I say, a little bit of red meat, to the masses, because they really, I think he really took some of the stuff that was said last week and some of the criticism of him directly and then indirectly, probably took it to heart a little bit. And, we'll see where it goes, but it's been an interesting year just watching it from just a media standpoint.
Do you think if it comes to it, you're talking about Marcus Satterfield, and obviously he's the target of a lot of angst right now, and it's been Ed Foley at times, special teams coordinator, and then John Cole kind of bailed him out yesterday. But if it comes to it, do you think that Matt Rule is a guy that could make that choice to fire a guy?
I mean, I think he better. I mean, I would think that he would, but it's going to come down to that, because you've got a 5-star quarterback. You've been trying to recruit towards this system or towards, winning. And there's just so much heat right now that, and let's face it, the track record wasn't great coming in to begin with. A lot of people question the hire from the jump. So, I think I'd like to think that Matt Rule thought, hey, Marcus really has to get something going here or he's going to be living on borrowed time. And I believe when push comes to shove, he'll make the decision that's necessary. Now, will it be a very, very difficult one? Absolutely. But, this is different than any other job he's been at. This is not Baylor. This is not Temple. And this is a place where he's going to be scrutinized more than any other stop in his career save for the NFL. He'll have to make that move, and I think he will.
So I want to throw a weird one out to you. Go back to the Bill Callahan days. If he replaces Kevin Cosgrove with a competent defensive coordinator, does Bill Callahan have success at Nebraska?
I think it's certainly possible. I mean, we saw what was possible even the year before when he did have Cosgrove as the DC. I think now there was a dynamic there, with Osborne being in the office. Even if he would have agreed, let's say, made a change and agreed to some of the things that Osborne, I think, was probably insisting upon when that change was made, I don't think it would have lasted very long because those are prideful guys, and Callahan already had one eye back on the NFL anyway. So, I mean, it's kind of it's an interesting what if, but quite honestly, I don't think that relationship was going to last very long anyway. But I thought Callahan was a really good coach. I mean, the offense, there were no issues with the offense. The offense was fine.
Yeah.
They just didn't have, the right defense to stop teams in the Big 12.
John Bishop
of unsportsmanlike conduct on 16-20
zone, and of course, the play-by-play voice of Creighton basketball. The officiating was bad. It's been bad in the Big Ten all season long. There are a couple of pass interference calls that may have cost Nebraska. There were a couple of spots, certainly, before the first half. Emmett Johnson had a first down, and they mysteriously move it a couple of yards back. There was a time Matt Rule thought it was going to be marked at the 1 yard line, and it was marked at the 2 yard line. He called a play that didn't work, he said, because he thought it was going to be marked at the 1, and they dove over the top and didn't get it. How bad is the officiating in your mind in the Big Ten right now?
Oh, it's atrocious. It's terrible. I saw a few jokes on the social media yesterday that, because the Pac-12 always had a reputation as well, and they thought maybe some of the old Pac-12 refs showed up and helped out. But listen, the Big Ten's had an officiating problem for a long time. Generally, across the board in college football, there's been an officiating problem. But that game yesterday was in the Hall of Fame of poorly officiated games, and not even just from every call went against Nebraska. I thought, there may have been a couple of moments where Ohio State, probably got flagged for something they shouldn't have, but it was terrible. It was atrocious. And I've always had my philosophies on and my, possible solutions on what would need to take place. I do think that there needs to be some more there's always needed to be more accountability in officiating across all sports. The whole idea that you have one pool reporter go in and assigned to ask questions after a game is ridiculous. I mean, I think if there's a reason to do so, I think they should be held accountable in front of the entire press corps and answer the questions. And then, when the teams turn in their report, like Nebraska, I'm sure will probably have to turn in, if it was still on VHS, they'd have to probably, go buy 3 or 4 VHS tapes to turn in all the plays that they're going to have examined. But, those things should be publicly accounted for. We should see an officials report, something similar to what we see in the NBA. But it's bad. It's terrible. And I would love to be a fly on the wall when that officiating crew gets its feedback on what went wrong, because that spot on the missed first down in the first half it's Keystone Cops. It's ridiculous. Forget about pass interference, no pass interference, targeting, all that other stuff. To miss the very basics, to miss something like that so badly it's indescribable. And how anyone could be allowed to continue to officiate at that high a level with so much at stake, it's insane.
So let me ask you this. Officiating side, let's jump ahead to next week. Does Nebraska take what they learned in practice prior to Ohio State, the performance against Ohio State? Do they put it together, not only get their 6th win, but actually look like a team that is making improvements, that is eliminating these close game killers that has been haunting them, to give them some momentum going into the final 3 games of the season?
I mean, if they don't this week, the perceived easiest game remaining on the schedule, man, the intensity is going to wrap up or going to ratchet up tenfold because any goodwill that you would have built from the effort that we saw yesterday will be gone if they lose at home to UCLA. So, yeah, definitely the pressure is on, but the pressure's been on. I think I saw Evan Bland today had the story. Nebraska in the last 7 years has gone 0-7 in games where they could have become bowl eligible. Sure, some of those opponents were really, really difficult, but you're not going to have a better opportunity than you do on Saturday. So, and Matt Rule said as much. He said, if we don't see this similar kind of effort we saw today next week, then it's all going to be, for naught. So, yeah, there'll be some pressure on, but I think they can do it. The defense playing like they did, it makes the Indiana game look like a fluke, look like an aberration. And, it's going to be a lot like last year. You're going to be leaning on that defense to get you stops, get your field position, and then somehow find a way to finish enough drives to score enough points to win the game.
Nebraska is a 7-point favorite next week against UCLA. You like that line?
I was surprised. I thought it would be within a score. And when I saw it opened at 10.5, I mean, a lot of that's probably based on early UCLA. But the thing that worries you about this game is UCLA's coming off an idle week. So they've had an extra week to prepare. So they've not only been looking at the Indiana film for weaknesses, but they've been looking at the Ohio State film as well. So, it's not going to be easy. I would, if I were a bet man right now, I would definitely take UCLA if that thing stays above a touchdown.
Well, JB, congratulations on the Rams win over the Vikings on Thursday night. That was not – I looked at the video again. That was not face masking. Eric Crouch just called in. That was not face masking. It's a clean call in the end zone. Crazy.
I thought the celebration was appropriate. A lot of people said, hey, that's not the look of a celebration of a guy who just clinched the game with a safety. It's very simple, You act like you've been there before. You hand the quarterback's head back to the official and act like you've been there before.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
We talked about bad officiating. How hard would it be to have somebody in the booth saying, hey, guys, you missed it. That's face mask. Or you missed it. That should have been a first down. You marked it 3 yards. It seems like you could put a 3-year-old up there or a 6-year-old at least and get those calls right.
Yeah, I mean, the eye in the sky official that the NFL started to use with the expedited stuff, absolutely. It should be that way in college. The Big Ten, the SEC especially have no excuse. They got all the money in the world. Yep. They should be able to do something like that, and I think face mask will be reviewable in the near future.
Yep. Good stuff. Congratulations. Creighton gets the big win over Purdue. I think you're going to have another great team. This looks like a great
team. I think the defense is going to take some time to come along, but offensively they got a lot of shooters.
Yeah. Well, we want you back during the basketball season, and that is now. So be on hold. We will be calling soon. There you go.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Take care, Bish.
Thanks, Bish.
Take care, guys.
JB, longtime friend. We've known him since the early 60s, really. Really good guy.
Pretty close.
Our former boss here at KLIN at one time, John Bishop. And I remember doing a lot we would do Sports Nightly back in the day when we had a basketball game like in Norfolk or something like that, or in North Platte. I mean, we would go set up and do Sports Nightly from a gym, a high school gym. Those were the days. That was fun.
That was fun. Yeah. They're like, why are you here? JV plays at 7. Like varsity doesn't tip off till 8:30 or whatever, and you and I are there doing Sports Nightly.
He's a stud, John Bishop. And Creighton's going to be really, really good this year.
Yeah.
I mean, to say the least. I mean, that's what they do. Our grades. We're going to hand out our grades. We do it every week and then rank the teams in the Big Ten. Maybe we'll go up to Nebraska. I'm not sure.
Friday, November 22nd, by the way.
Friday, November 22nd.
Nebraska Creighton.
All right. Let's get to break and back with more after this.
This is Independent Dan Osborne, candidate for U.S. Senate in Nebraska, and I approve this message. Paid for by Osborne for Senate. I'm a Navy and Nebraska National Guard veteran, industrial mechanic, and lifelong independent. I only got involved in politics when corporate greed threatened my coworkers at the factory.
I think
across Nebraska, people aren't getting a fair shake. Costs need to be lowered. The border needs to be secured. We need a farm bill to be passed. But the government keeps wasting our taxpayers' dollars.
He's going to be a rebounding machine. I think he's going to have
she's
many
part of the problem.
double-doubles.
While in office, she's got 10 times richer, and the debt has doubled.
I think he'll average 80
She hasn't
games.
had a public town hall since 2017. She signed a pledge to only serve 2 terms and is now breaking that promise. That might be normal in Washington, but that doesn't make it right. That's why I ran for Senate. That's why I've been a registered independent for over 20 years. That's why we're not taking money.
He only had 3 rebounds, 7-1.
Why I won't be beholden
to
a party boss.
Only was called to push it off.
Nebraska.
He had a couple dunks that were called off because he traveled.
For over 80 years, Farm Bureau Financial Services has been protecting farmers and ranchers season after season.
You need to know you're covered, and you've got somebody covering your back.
You've got local people that everybody knows.
And we have a good policy and a good agent, and I guess that's what
I
you
think
need
he'll
to
be
be able to sleep at
okay
night.
against
Loyal,
7-footers in the
and
league.
rooted in ag for over 80 years. Learn more at fbfs.com/rooted in ag. It's your
A lot of
future.
these games, I don't see him playing much more than 10 minutes.
Toughness.
But I think he can be valuable in that role.
Results. When your team takes the field, this is what you expect. And if you've been injured, this
thing
is
that
what you
sucks
get
is
when you work with Friedman Law.
We
battle it out in the courtroom with the same toughness,
always
strength,
going to
and
get
passion
you
for injury
18
victims.
night.
Friedman Law suits up against the insurance
Because
company and
if
fights
he has a
hard for
night,
the
he's
compensation you deserve. Friedman Law, since 1962, helping injured people.
Shooters,
It's all we do.
and CGNR.
Do you have over $10,000 in credit card debt? If you're feeling the financial impact with unprecedented economic challenges, JetBlue is here for you. With JetBlue's Success Guarantee, you pay nothing unless your debt is reduced
You don't have
or resolved.
I'm just living sky high right
No,
now.
you don't.
Are phenomenal. They're able to
May
work
wind
with
up being-
me.
he's gonna give you-
Call
I
for
think
your
Gilbert
free
wanna
debt
go
resolution
smaller.
information now. 800-200-6895. 800-200-6895.
Buchten Gel,
Security Awareness Month.
they say he's a good 3-point shooter, but he shot 29% from 3 last year.
These
at
updates
UCLA.
are used to
And he
patch up
does look
security
athletic.
identity
He was bringing the ball up the
to gain
floor.
access
There's
to
lots
your
of-
personal info.
He's
But
got
for
a great
comprehensive
handle.
identity theft
He's not the
protection,
passer that
there's
Mask is,
LifeLock.
though.
LifeLock
Mask can
alerts
bring the
you
ball
to
up as
more
well.
uses of your
They'll
personal
use him
info
in pressure to bring the
identity
ball up.
theft issues that
I think
arise.
he's
Start your
I think he'll be a
30-day
good rebounder.
trial.
I think he's skilled. He's not close to the shooter or the passer that Mask is.
We doing grades here?
Yeah. You want to take it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Rundown of Husker sports with Mike Melby and Tom Stevens.
They've done studies, 60% of the time it works every time.
On 1499.3 KLIN.
Welcome back, Tom Stevens, Mike
Melby, Husker Rewind every Sunday, 5 to 7. Big fan.
John Bishop of 1620 The Zone for being on with us. Next hour, it's BC Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7. And at the top of the hour, Tanya Taki, talk a little Husker volleyball. Right now, time to get to the grades.
You want to take it? Yeah.
All righty.
So
the grades
will start with the rushing offense.
Ohio State has one of the best defenses in the country. Nebraska grinds out 121 yards on 33 carries, 3.7 per carry. The most surprising and helpful of those is a positive 31 yards by Dylan Raiola. He was sacked several times, but that lost yardage that goes against his rushing total was far outweighed by the other big runs that he had that we saw for the first time this year.
He had a 38-yard run.
Yeah, he did. And to me, that is something that's been missing from his game. I know you want to try to protect him, but there were so many times earlier in this year that you watched him and you're like, you're yelling at him. There is no one within 30 yards of the center of the field where you're at, and like, just go.
He's not Adrian Martinez. He's not Taylor Martinez or even Tommy Armstrong, but he's a pretty decent athlete, and he's 235 pounds.
Just go get go get the first down.
Go get take the 5 yards and fly.
Yeah, I thought his decision making there yesterday to not hesitate, not wait for somebody to break open. I thought that was excellent.
So you gave him a what?
I gave him a B.
I gave him a
Dowdell,
B as well.
14 for 60, 4.3 yards for him. I thought as a whole, Dante Dowdell is a bit of an enigma because you see him do exactly what Matt Rule talks about, be a really good but not great running back so many times.
It feels like there's always one defender that if Nebraska makes that guy miss, if they run him over, if he stiff arms him, that 20-yard run becomes a 60-yarder.
I'm going to send a message type of play when he comes up on a one-on-one. To me, Dante Dowdell does too often. Stop sending the message. Have the message be, have the message be, I just scored a touchdown. But the thing is, I watched Thomas Fedoni do exactly the same thing later in the game, where he decided to try to truck a guy versus sidestep him and go.
Emmett Johnson, 8 carries, 30 yards, 3.8. But they outgained Ohio State. Ohio State only had 60 yards rushing, 62 yards rushing. Nebraska 121. That's pretty good for Nebraska. So, and not just against Ohio State, against anybody that they played this year. That's not terrible. Passing, Dylan Raiola, 21 of 32, 152. No touchdowns. He had one interception. I'd like to see him go deep more often than he does. Thomas Fedoni had a nice day, 4 catches, 55 yards. Barney has a nice day. It seems like every time he's out there, 7 catches, 49
yards. Banks 2 catches, 31 yards. Mayer had early. It was nullified. They said
Brown. That could have been I thought it was a bad call. One of the many bad calls. So the perimeter blocking, though, from the wide receivers,
horrible
in the screen game, in the run game, is just bad. I mean, Nebraska tried screen after screen after, whether it was a bubble screen or just a slip screen or whatever. None of them worked.
No,
none of them.
And the thing is, the guy that the receiver is supposed to be blocking on the edge, right? His guy makes the play every time. Not the guy that's following the man in motion that's getting the screen pass, who's unblocked, by the way.
Yeah.
The guy that's supposed to be blocked is making the play, where the guy that's unblocked can't get there faster than the guy that is being blocked. And it's like literally rinse repeat every time they try to throw a screen pass.
I gave him a C- in the passing game.
I gave him a D. Between that and this goes partly to play calling, and also the fact that Dylan Raiola missed 2 wide open people that would have been touchdowns. And he wasn't under pressure either time.
He wasn't. The one to Banks was a welcome. If we criticize Satterfield, we have to praise him occasionally when he comes up with a design on that play. He got Banks wide open, and Dylan's got to complete that pass. There's another one, as you mentioned, in the end zone. Nebraska did score on that drive, so I forgive that one a little bit. And they did get down to the 1-yard line, and Ohio State had to punt from the 1-yard line. So Nebraska did eventually score in that scenario. And they were bailed out a little bit by John Cole all day long. But you're right. I mean, nothing was great. The pass game was just mediocre. You give them a D. I said C-.
Yeah.
Against the run, they were definitely an A. Ohio State, 31 carries, 64 yards, 2.1 a carry. I mean, they've got legitimate All-American running backs. Quinshon Judkins is a stud. It cost him, I believe, $2 million to get him from Ole Miss. And he had 10 carries for 29 yards. Travion Henderson, 10 carries, 25 yards. Will Howard, 8 carries, very good runner, 240 pounds, 8 carries, 14 yards. Nebraska's defense against the run was spectacular. Where was that against Indiana?
Yeah, exactly. I have no clue.
I gave him an A.
I gave him, you know what? And one of Emma Stone's better movies, Easy A.
Easy A. Against the pass, not so great. I gave him a C-. Will Howard was only 13 of 16, but 221 and 3 TDs. He did have the 1 pick. He was sacked twice, so Nebraska got good pressure on him. But Carnell Tate had a TD and 102 yards. You had Jeremiah Smith, who's the best freshman receiver in college football, 3 catches, 70 yards, a TD. Judkins had a TD. Malcolm Hartzog had the 1 pick. And again, they did have the 2 sacks, and the pressure was decent. But Ohio State is loaded with talent. You're not going to beat them both, against the run and against the pass. So you're going to have to give up something against Ohio State. So I didn't hate it. That wasn't a great performance, but I thought the defensive performance overall was pretty good. Against the pass,
it wasn't very good.
Yeah, I gave him a C against the pass. I mean, Will Howard is. I'm surprised at how good he is, but I think part of that has to do with the coaching. And you can say what you want to about Chris Kleinman, but I think Ryan Day and his staff is that much better than Chris Kleinman and his staff, and that's why Will Howard is that much better at Ohio State.
Special teams, I gave him a B. John Hall had a great day. Longest kick on the road, tied Brett Maher for the longest kick on the road, 54 yards. He made kicks of 39, 54 right before the half, which really helped the momentum going into the locker room, and then a 47-yarder. Quentin Ives had a bad muff on the opening kickoff. That was not good. Vishini was just okay. Didn't have much in the return game as far as concerned, but they covered kicks well and they made kicks.
Yeah, surprisingly, B, I kept waiting for something to go wrong with special teams, and it didn't, so that was a pleasant surprise.
I'd love to see Isaiah Castaneda go for a punt return. I mean, I think he's being a little safe, and probably I would as well. He fair catches a lot of punts.
But in his defense, I watched the game this morning. I did not have a chance to see 1 second of it yesterday with my schedule. But there were 2 guys unblocked every single time we punted the ball.
Agree.
So to me, that's not a great punt return unit.
Yeah, it's not like he's Johnny Rogers. We don't have Johnny Rogers.
Well, but that's the whole point. That's all scheme and coaching.
Yeah. I agree.
So.
Overall, I gave him a B-. The play calling was not great, but the defense was great. They held again Ohio State to 64 yards rushing. Raiola was good, and then he was bad. Nebraska ran for 121. I was happy with that. Didn't pass for enough yards, but overall they played pretty well against the 4th-ranked team in the country, and they lose by 4.
Yeah, and for play calling, game management, it's tough there because I thought the game management was okay, not great. But the play calling to me was not good. It was beyond frustrating, and I don't understand. And granted, you got to give Marcus Satterfield, props when they do wind up having plays that get guys open. But at the same time, he ran, it felt like 47 screen plays that you're like, why are you trying this over and over? It has continued to fail.
Right.
And there's times that you just, as a fan, we don't know what's going on. I get it. We don't know the game plan, all that stuff, but I just scratch my head at the play calls. I have for, we had 12 games last year, and we're 8 games in this year, 20 games in. I question a lot of play calls.
And I understand the call because you're facing a pass rush that's really good in Ohio State, but the execution is just not good.
Yeah, but you have receivers that cannot block.
Cannot block. So probably stop. I would like to see a quarterback draw, as well as
and I think he showed that.
A couple more quarterback
draws would be welcome in my mind.
Hour number 2, Husker Rewind.
The real difference between Deb Fisher and independent Dan Osborne. Fisher's bought and paid for by special interests and corporations. Osborne is not.
Deb Fisher's had 12 years to do something about the border. She voted against the border bill that was drafted by Republicans because she takes money from big ag.
Securing the border. It takes a working man to get the job done. That's Dan Osborne.
Figured out.
Career Politicians PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
Ready to hit the road in style? Liberty First Credit Union is revving up your ride with unbeatable auto loan specials. Cruise away with rates as low as 4.79% APR for 48 months on a 2020 or newer vehicle. Need a longer term? No worries. They've got you covered with 4.89 APR for 60 months and 4.99 APR for 72 months. Hurry, these rates are cruising fast, so don't get left in the dust. Visit libertyfirstcu.com. Credit factors apply. Rates, terms, and conditions subject to change.
This is Pastor Steve from Calvary Community Church. I want to invite you to be our guest at any of our 3 services on Sunday at 9 and 10:30 a.m. and again at our bilingual service at 3 p.m. At our church, we believe that the Bible is the inspired Word of God, and that is why we study it verse by verse every week. So when you come to our church, we share with you what is written in the Word of God because we know
that they usually have a text reminder.
Located at First and Superior in Northwest Lincoln. Check out our website at www.mycalvary.org.
Are you paying too much for term life insurance? A man age 50 non-tobacco user can obtain $500,000 of coverage for as little as $110 per month. Level rate for 20 years.
We'll be on here in a couple minutes.
Level rate for 20 years. If you're a smoker, there are great rates available for you as well. Call Term Busters for a quote. 1-800-908-7636. You're probably paying more than you should. Call 1-800-908-7636. Remember, call Term Busters. 1-800-908-7636. Sample rate for preferred non-tobacco rate class. Exam required to qualify.
Unsure what to do with inherited coins or bullion? Lincoln Coin and Bullion provides life.
Nebraska won. We haven't mentioned Nebraska won in a long time. So.
Or schedule an appointment.
From the Momo Pizzeria and Ristorante Studios, we are the voice of Lincoln. KLIN Lincoln. KBDK HD3 Lincoln. K257TN Lincoln is 1,499 trees.
You want to take it?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Forgot to do that. Looking fire in hour number 2 on its own.
Yeah, that's the one that
That's the recap of Husker Sports. Husker
Rewind 100 times easier than
Stevens and Mike Melby.
Livingstone's Harper again. Perfect pass to slide Andy Jackson. Boom! Beautiful connection. Faster than email. Nebraska's up 7-6 in the first.
Now, here's Tom Stevens and Mike Melby on 1,499.3 KLIN.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Tom Stevens, Mike Melby, Husker Rewind on 1400 KLIN. Nebraska volleyball,
number 2 of the country. Number 1 of the country. It proves to 20-1 and 10-0 in the Big Ten. Couple of wins over the weekend, a sweep over Illinois on Friday night, and then on Saturday night they get a 4-set win over Michigan. A little surprising. Didn't play maybe their best volleyball. Nebraska hit only 206. Held Michigan to 150. Tanya Taki, we welcome in, volleyball star, coach at Nebraska 1. Hi, Tanya. How are you? Let's do this. Let's do that. Hi, Tanya. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you.
Good. We used to work here at KLIN. Remember back in the day, you were in sales, and now
I was radio sales. Yeah.
Yep. And now you're a big shot coach for Nebraska 1, and you go on this show and talk Husker volleyball. What happened last night? Didn't look as maybe as Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like we're trying to find this groove of, are we going with Krause? Are we keeping Landfair? You know, are we keeping Harper in 6 rotations? Just trying to feel that confidence, you know, in yourself and in your team. It's just feels a little bit like we're bouncing around and we just haven't settled in yet. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
We're just kind of waiting for that moment of all stars aligned and this is what we need to do. And I think what Coach Cook is looking for is, how do we beat Wisconsin? How do we beat Texas? And what rotation is that going to be? And not necessarily how do we beat Michigan and how do we beat Illinois? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It really does. That's an interesting take on it, Tanya. With the way Taylor Landfair played yesterday, not her best game, obviously. It makes you wonder if maybe we are going to see a little bit more of Lindsay against Wisconsin this Friday.
Yeah, I mean, this date has been circled on the calendar for, however long, and then we turn around and play them again in November at home. And so, yeah, I mean, this is just one of those games where you're hoping that everybody is, trusting their setter. It seems like we've had, 2 or 3 times a game where the setter sets and there's nobody there. Okay, is that, we're trying to do this echolocate thing. The middles have got to be loud. And but, in atmospheres where there's a lot of talking, a lot of things happening, a lot of moving parts, players are diving on the floor, so your routes are off. We should be having those be almost a minimum when you're playing a team like Wisconsin or playing a team like Texas. So I think Coach Cook is just looking for those moments of just aha moments of, this is what we need to do against Wisconsin.
17 straight matches won, 38 at home going back 3 seasons. How impressive is that in your mind?
I mean, when you have teams like Wisconsin coming in, Penn State, when you were looking at the regionals that start coming in, the Arkansas game last year, that everything was on the line as far as being able to keep that home win streak. But I mean, I remember the games where I'm in the stands and I don't want to lose and my voice is going to make a difference. So here I am going to yell positive, encouraging things the whole time and getting the crowd involved. And it does make a difference. And I don't know if it's just the volleyball gods. Sometimes when the crowd's behind you and you serve and it hits the tape, it's going to go over at home and it's going to be a miss that away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So having that extra energy, sometimes things just start going your way.
It feels like sometimes being at home, maybe this has happened with Nebraska football in years past, where there almost feels like a pressure on the players to perform at a high level. It doesn't have that effect at the Devaney Center or the old Coliseum. It was definitely an advantage having that crowd?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just a belief there, a confidence there. Being at home, like our crowd knows what our team is capable of. They're very high volleyball IQ. They understand, the strategies that the team is trying to make. They respect good volleyball. Like, they like it when Purdue plays well and is serving short to interrupt our middles and is trying to hit at the setter so we can't set Andy Jackson. And they're noticing those things and being like, wow, this is a really good chess match of volleyball because they're so evenly matched, or they work really hard, or everybody knows that it's going to the outside. How do we stop them? Like, those are the fun things that make the game. It could be anybody's game. If the outsides get hot and we can't stop them, they're going to win more points. So I think the crowd knowing and believing and having that confidence in their team, like, I think makes a big difference. Where I think in the football world, like, everybody wants us to be good and are pissed that we're not. And so there's just a different tone. Right? Like, be good because I want you to be good. We deserve to be good. Not because I'm confident in you that you can do this. It's just a completely different feel.
Yep.
Yeah. Hope versus belief. So speaking of chess matches, we have another chess match this Friday night, John Cook versus Kelly Sheffield. What do you think Coach Cook learned in the string of, what was it, 8 straight losses in Wisconsin, and the way they went about ending that string last year? How does this set up for this Friday night between these two geniuses?
Well, I think insert Jordan Larson and her philosophy on being an outside hitter, and sometimes you can't get the kill because you have a 6'9" and a 6'8" block in your face as the outside hitter. And so what other options do I have? I can tool, I can hit high hands, I can hit cut shot, I can do the tip roll thing that you see Harper Murray doing right now. And she has a word called recycle, where it's just not a great set. You have a huge block. You have a controlled hit into the block. You get it back, and maybe it's a free ball that you can run your middle on instead of having to trap set your outside. So I think, her philosophy on being a good outside and not hitting every single ball into the block has been great for Nebraska. You can see those changes happening with Harper Murray and her changing up her shot. So I'm actually kind of excited to see what Harper is going to choose to do against Wisconsin instead of just block, where we saw that there was one set where they had 11 blocks last year at home. And it was like, okay, well, let's try something different. And I think we're just going to go into the game already expecting the block to be huge.
How much of a progression have you seen from Harper, these freshmen
from last year?
I mean, I have to say that I'm really impressed with Harper's kind of mental turnaround. I mean, physically, I don't know that she's doing a whole lot different, but just her mental choices and the games and maybe not taking some of the social media stuff so seriously and like just being able to, kind of roll with it. I mean, I feel like she has a new level of confidence, and then it's exciting to see that in her play.
Yep. There you go. Nebraska is number 2. They have the number 1 RPI. Pittsburgh number 1. In your mind, should Nebraska be number 1, or does it matter?
I mean, I don't love being number 1 because it just adds a whole nother level of crazy, like, target on your back. So, I mean, I feel like Pittsburgh is kind of earning the number 1 with, barely losing even any sets. I mean, I know you talk about RPIs, but I don't know if like a sweep, when they're sweeping left and right in hardly having any 5-set games, 4-set games where Nebraska was squeaking by wins, is that more or less? I mean, I like being number 2 personally. I don't know that number 1 is a good number for us because I just don't know that we've earned it like on the floor. Maybe if we, when you talk about being able to win, against Stanford and Louisville, we know those were sweeps and if those get us higher numbers, but I don't know, number 1 just puts a bigger target on your back.
Yeah.
Tanya, I'm curious if you have ever figured out the eligibility rules that have applied to Anna Schmeck, because wasn't she a freshman when you were a junior?
Right, exactly. No, she's just huge. And everybody wants her to be gone. And same, I mean, it's Sarah Franklin. Like, I feel like Sarah Franklin's going to have 6 years of volleyball. Taylor Lansfair is going to have 6 years of volleyball. I mean, they're talking about new rules where everybody gets 5 years now. I mean, there's all kinds of things like that it's just kind of crazy out there. And, I mean, it's only made volleyball better to have a 6'9" block out there. It's only made it better.
Former Nebraska volleyball great Tanya Taki-Dorn. Wisconsin is ranked 8th and Penn State third. Are you more concerned about Wisconsin or Penn State?
Man, do I have to answer that?
Yeah, you do.
I'm actually really looking forward to it because I have tickets to the Penn State game, so I'm actually going to Penn State over Thanksgiving. So I'm really looking forward to it. So I really hope that we can beat Wisconsin in this game, because then it just really puts a lot more pressure on the Penn State game, because I think it might be for like conference championship almost.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's always Wisconsin. They gear up for us. They love playing us. They love to take us down. So I don't know. It'll be interesting.
It would be kind of enjoyable beating either. I mean, there are a couple of Nebraska players playing for Penn State now, so that would be kind of nice. But there's all that there's a huge rivalry. I think I would rather beat Wisconsin than Penn State. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. Former Husker volleyball great Tanya Taki-Dorn, and of course head coach at Nebraska One. How are things going at Nebraska One right now?
Well, we're kind of in between our tryout season. We just got done with our 14 and under tryouts, and then our high school tryouts are November 9th coming up. So it's going to be an exciting time to get our high school teams figured out and then figure out where we get to travel to the next tournament. So that's always fun.
Tanya, you're the best. We'll have you soon. We'll have you back soon. There you go. Tanya Taki-Dorn.
Thanks, Tanya.
Played under both John Cook and Terry Pettit. Started with Terry Pettit, finished under John Cook. So 2 Hall of Famers. That's not bad coaching. She's had pretty good coaching is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, she is a pretty good coach.
Yeah. So therefore she became a coach. So that makes sense. It's all fitting together absolutely perfectly. It's time for the Big Ten Blitz.
The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz.
All right.
We try to go through every
game in the Big Ten, and then we rank the teams. I'm not going to rank them all to 18, but we'll see where we get when we do rank them. The USC big win over Rutgers, no problems on Friday night, 42-20. Woody Marks ran for 3 TDs. Miller Moss ran for 1, threw for 2. He was 20 of 28 for 308, 2 TDs. Mekhi Lemon also had 134 yards receiving at a TD. USC is back, even though they're only 4-4, and definitely struggling in the Big Ten. Their adjustment from the Pac-12 has been a big one. Rutgers gets a bye, and then they host Minnesota. USC is at Washington this week.
Top-ranked Oregon Ducks, 38-9 winners yesterday over the 20th-ranked Fighting Illini of Fighting Brett Bielema's. Dylan Gabriel, you know what he's chasing? He's chasing wins, dude.
And history, baby.
No history
no
for him.
history.
He says wins only. The records don't make any
He doesn't
difference.
need history. Doesn't need to be the best quarterback of all time in college history.
No, he was 18 of 26 for 291 yards yesterday. Oregon racked up 527 yards of total offense. Tez Johnson caught 6 of Gabriel's passes for 102. Gabriel overall having, you got to think he's in the top 3 for the Heisman. Yesterday, he passes Timmy Chang. Gabriel now has 17,236 career passing yards. Case Keenum holds the FBS record.
Can he catch Keenum? Isn't he a couple thousand behind Keenum?
19,217. So he's essentially 1,960.
He's not going to make it.
That's going to, I'll be honest, all the games count. And you got a 12-team playoff, which means you've got a Big Ten title game that they would play in. That's 13 games. They're going to get a first-round bye, and then they got to win 3 more. So he could have enough games left in this season to get that extra 2,000 yards.
Remember we had that debate with Caitlin Clark? But she played 5-6 years, whatever it was. I think this is the 6th year for Dylan Gabriel. He started with Scott Frost.
Hey, I want to ask you a question really quick. Tanya brought it up. We're talking about, they may make 5 years of eligibility for all NCAA athletes. Blah, blah,
I think
blah.
they should. Just make it 5.
I'm going to throw this out. With NIL right now, why is there a limitation? As long as they take a minimum credit hour load and they maintain a 2.0 GPA, why does a college student have to give up eligibility if they can make money?
A guy could have 14 doctorates by the time he graduates?
Or he could have 14 basket weaving degrees. I don't know. But I'm just saying that because it's been brought up. What about just
maybe a doctorate in basket weaving? Is there a doctorate in you can be a doctor in basket weaving? Maybe
possible.
Number 13, Indiana. They are no fluke.
They've never been until now. They beat Washington 31-17 with their backup quarterback.
Javon Jackson, 11 of 19, 124, a TD. He did have a pick. Didn't even play that well. and they win 31-17. They ran for 215 versus Nebraska, 188 in their win over Washington. Justice Ellison, 29 carries, 123, and a TD. Will Rogers, not a great day, not the right or the quarterback for Washington, 19 to 26, 202, 0 TDs, 1 pick. In fact, it was a pick 6 that he threw. And Washington, well, they'll get USC this week. Indiana will be at Michigan State.
NCAA's second leading rusher, Caleb Johnson, had 109 yards and 3 TDs. Backup QB Brendan Sullivan added another rushing TD, and Iowa scores 28 third-quarter points to knock off Northwestern at home yesterday, 40-14. How many times in Brian Ferentz' career as the offensive coordinator did Iowa score 28 points?
Never.
I'm betting it
Ever.
was not often. Yeah, especially not in a quarter. At any rate, Iowa kind of rolls and dominates. Wildcats fall to 3-5, 1-4 in the conference. Iowa now 5-3, 3-2. In conference play. Next up for the Hawkeyes is Wisconsin. And next up for the Northwestern Wildcats, do they have the bye? Nope. Yeah, they do. No, they do not. It is against Purdue in West Lafayette.
They're at Purdue. And by the way, they made a change at quarterback. Cade McNamara out. Brendan Sullivan, the Northwestern transfer, in. And it worked, as you mentioned, 28 points in the third quarter. Minnesota over Maryland. Max Brosmer, 320 yards, 4 TDs. Darius Taylor had 81 yards and a TD. Minnesota is now 5-3, 1 game away from being bowl eligible. They have some nice wins on the resume. This was maybe one of them. I don't know. Maryland's not very good, that's for sure. They belted Maryland in this one, and we'll see how they do next week. Minnesota is at Illinois. We thought Illinois was pretty good at one time, and I'm not sure how good they are now. Maryland has Oregon after the bye. They do have a bye.
Michigan State. So 2 years ago, they were playing in Michigan, and all of a sudden you wound up with people spitting on others and guys with helmets hitting guys on the other team, and it was just ugly. Charges were brought.
Sure.
Criminal charges.
It's
so
fun.
What else would you expect in Michigan State the next time they play at Ann Arbor? Michigan wins the game 24-17. Colston Loveland caught 2 TDs and a 2-point conversion, helping Michigan in the victory. As the final seconds went off the clock, players threw punches, and it was just kind of an ugly scene. Players left benches. I get heated rivalries and all that stuff.
This is happening everywhere in college football. It
Yeah.
happened with Nebraska, Ohio State yesterday.
Yeah, the Loveland.
If it's not the players, it's the fans. If it's not the fans, it's the players.
Yeah, the Loveland had made the comment in the immediate post game talking about little bro always got something to say, and if little bro wants to get in my face, I'm going to put little bro in his place. And you're just like, really? Whatever.
Very mature.
The Wolverines are going to face loss number 4 next week as they'll host number 1 Oregon. I don't think Michigan is a very good team, and I think Oregon is going to roll them in that game next week.
They don't have a quarterback.
No, Michigan State plays Indiana.
There you go. Penn State over Wisconsin. We haven't done that one yet. They improved to 7-0. The third-ranked team in the country over Wisconsin, 28-13. Wisconsin had won 3 in a row, playing pretty good football. Bo Pribula took over for the injured Drew Aller and looked really good. He threw for only 98 yards, but he had a TD. He ran for a bunch of yards. Penn State 173 overall on the ground, 246 via the pass, and they held Wisconsin to 80 yards rushing. Wisconsin, who was playing, again, good football. They got blasted earlier in the season to Alabama, but they have Iowa. They're at Iowa next week, and Penn State will host Ohio State. Maybe the game of the year so far in college football? Possibly?
Probably, I would say so. Yeah.
Better than Oregon, Ohio State?
We'll see if it lives up to the billing.
Yeah, because that was a really good game.
Yeah.
And the officials decided it. That was great. How they don't you love when officials get involved in a game and they cost one team the game over the other? That's fun.
It seems like
enjoy
that's in their job description now.
Yeah. So ranking the teams, you got Oregon, the number 1 team in the country and the number 1 team right now in college football. After that, how do you rank the Big Ten?
Top 5, I go Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana, Illinois.
Okay. You don't have do you have Indiana in there?
Indiana 4.
Okay. I got Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State. And I was going to go, until Ohio State's performance this weekend, I would still have them ahead of Penn State, despite the fact that Penn State is third, Ohio State fourth. I just think Ohio State has not played good football as of late. But I'm going to go Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Indiana, and then I don't really care.
I think Illinois is 5, and then
they
after
might
that,
be terrible against Oregon.
but it's against the number 1 team in the country as well.
Yeah, but what I guess the point I'm trying to make about the Big Ten is you've got 4 really good teams: Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Illinois, or Indiana. And then you've got everybody else who's the same. Everybody's the same.
Essentially. I mean, I've got Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, and Michigan all ranked above Nebraska.
Yeah, I don't know where to put Nebraska. If this is not a facade, if this is not an illusion that we saw yesterday, then maybe I'm willing to go higher. But as we've seen before, Nebraska plays good, and then they play terrible.
I will tell you this. I have moved UCLA out of the basement and put Purdue in it.
Well, I don't think. How many coaches, let me ask you this. How many coaches get fired this year from the Big Ten? Ryan Walters from Purdue. Anybody else?
You got to think UCLA is going to give Deshaun Foster more than 1 year.
They have to give him more than 1 year.
Unless they want to fire him and hire Tony White.
Northwestern has the coach of the year. They're not firing. USC is not firing Lincoln Riley despite the fact they're 4-4.
I don't know about that. There's
Washington
all
just
kinds
hired
of talk about what's going on.
Jed Fish is going to get more than 1 year, you would think, at Washington.
Yeah,
there's a lot of first-year coaches.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody else getting fired unless Michigan decides to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they expected out of Sherrod Moore, but I would be disappointed.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was a good hire at all. They were just trying to keep a recruiting class, and if that's the only reason that you're going to worry about it, then you're hiring the guy for the wrong reasons.
Mike Loxley might be concerned at Maryland. They are 1-4 in the league. 1-4.
Well, if you don't have a quarterback named Tagovailoa, makes it a little bit more difficult.
Think maybe 2 coaches get fired. Walters at Purdue and Loxley at Maryland.
And I also predict there will be more than a handful of key assistants that will be moving on, not of their own accord, in the Big Ten. Because
are you saying Nebraska may make a move as far as assistants go?
I'm not saying that I think they will versus I think they should, but that's not my call. But I think there's going to be some coordinators.
It's not your call?
No, probably a good thing it's not.
Because you'd fire everybody?
No.
I used to do that all the time as a Vikings fan, fire the whole coaching staff.
Oh, I know.
On Sunday afternoon. You know me well enough. Hey, you as a Cowboys fan have done the same thing.
Absolutely. It's my job.
You fire everybody on Sunday, and then you hire them all back on a Monday morning. That's what you do.
I don't want Mike McCarthy back, though.
Well, let's get to break. Come back with more. It's sports. Lots of sports. 2 hours. Husker Rewind. We've got him. BC coming up next.
Why should Nebraskans believe anything Deb Fisher says about Dan Osborne when Fisher's made a career out of breaking her promises, like her promise on term limits?
I do believe in term limits at the federal level.
And I would term limit myself.
I don't know if that DC.
Special interests who've made Deb a millionaire will say anything to keep her in office. This November, don't get catfished.
I have a feeling that if
Career politicians back responsible
keeps his
for
job,
advertising not authorized by any candidate.
their OC is going to get. They need to replace him.
Strength, passion, results. When your team takes the field, this is what you expect. And if you've been injured, this is what you get when you work with the ball.
Battle it out in the courtroom with the same toughness, strength, and passion for injury victims. Friedman Law suits up against the insurance company and fights hard for the compensation you deserve. Friedman Law, since 1962, helping injured people. It's what we do. It's all we do.
Cashback is not available on gas in New Jersey and Wisconsin.
Billy, your gas light's on. We need to stop and fill up.
No way, Jen. Gas around here is too expensive. We can make it a little further.
Billy, listen to your big sister. You don't need to drive all over searching for the lowest gas prices. Do what I do and use Upside.
Upside?
Do you live under a rock, Billy? Upside is the hottest cashback app out there. It's free to download.
Hey,
and
DC, how are you?
Every gallon of gas you buy.
Good.
I use it all the time. And I've made around $200.
You can make that kind of cash back just for buying the gas you have to buy anyway.
Yes, I'm looking at the Upside Upside app now, and there's a gas station at the next exit offering 25 cents per gallon cash back.
Okay, I'm stopping to download Upside and fill up my tank. Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code FRIEND to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, to PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code FRIEND for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code FRIEND for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
First thing tomorrow morning,
Hi, I'm
I'll
Martha Stewart.
be out with
Every
the
year,
chainsaw
more than
and
4 million pets.
trim our
and
tree out front up enough to the point where it doesn't
friends
fall on
American
kids on Halloween.
have been helping animals since
It's starting to separate now. The trunk
The
is.
goal is to ensure that pets have a
Oh,
safe
yeah.
shelter,
That is
especially
dangerous.
Yeah, they're not coming out to take it down.
adopting a
No,
shelter pet allows
lightning
shelters to help
That was just that high
That wind, that was
Yeah.
just the 80-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
today and
Yeah,
take some
it's right
time to
along the
learn
back.
more about American
It's gonna
Humane's
come down
other
to
work
some
at
section.
AmericanHumane.org.
Are you having trouble hearing? Hearing loss can devastate the quality of your life. Now, there's an affordable fix for you or your loved one. Rated in the best hearing aids of 2024 by USA Today, Audion Hearing has the highest quality hearing aids at the lowest prices, just $189.
I actually like them better than my old $5,000 hearing aids.
I could not believe how my hearing and life changed.
Join over 500,000 happy customers by going to audionhearing.com. That's AUDIEN hearing.com.
You gonna take it?
Back to Husker Rewind with Tom Stevens and Mike Melby.
They're storming the floor. Tim Miles has punched our ticket, Husker fans. It's time to twerk. Let's go dancing.
On 1499.3 KLIN.
No matter how many times you hear
That
that,
it still disturbs her.
And it's good.
you're on 1499. KLIN. That's Tom Stevens and Mike Melby joining us on the Talking text line from Husker 24/7. Mr. Brian Christopherson, BC, how is your Sunday going?
It's going all right. I'm a little sleep deprived because we left pretty early from Cincinnati, actually, not Columbus. We drove 2 hours to Cincinnati, then flew, and then I went to the basketball game. But there are worse things to do than going to cover sports, you know. So
very good point. Very
but
good point.
But I am a little sleepy. So if I say something silly, it's because of that, and not because I just have a few marbles that aren't up there.
All right.
But,
Well, if you say something silly, we'll have a plaque made, so you can always remember it, because it doesn't happen often. Your takeaways, I just kind of an overview. I mean, we can get into about 47 different specifics. Instead of that, can you just give me kind of your overview? How do you feel after a very short night of sleep and a long flight and a long day following the 21-17 loss to Ohio State yesterday?
This is one of those tricky ones, and you saw Matt Rule navigating it in the post game, because you're not supposed to say those evil words like moral victory. People frown upon it, and yet it was a game where, you know what my score prediction was? It was 48-14 Ohio State.
Yep.
So that's what I thought. And I ask every week, I ask people, okay, what's your pick, you know, on social media. And even the biggest Kool-Aid drinkers out there, this was one where it's like, that spread might be about right, that 25, 26 point spread. So everybody was kind of around that ballpark that I was hearing from.
Do you feel like do you feel like that was a turning point for this program? Because it felt like that's what Rule was trying to get across in his message in his State of the Union speech after that game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just say all that as build up to say, like, if I'm going to say that before the game and then they go out and they compete like that and you are actually ahead with 10 minutes left and you have a chance with 2 minutes to drive it down the field and score, I know there's all sorts of pieces of that game that are painful, because honestly, Nebraska had more chances than Ohio State. Like, Ohio State maximized their scoring opportunities as well as they could do. Rule was pretty much nailed it when he said, basically, say for 3 plays, that Nebraska's defense was dominant. They had a firm grip on it, and you saw sort of how exasperated Ryan Day was, I think, even after the game, with his team's inability to run the ball. And so I was really impressed by the way they got off the mat from last week, which was a totally depressing game in Indiana. And there was a reason why the criticism was so heavy and why people were so surly all week. I mean, that goes with the territory when you have a game like that. But there is good culture within a program, I think, shown when you see them come back from that and play good football yesterday. They did. They really fought. And now what I wrote yesterday, and this is the key, and Rule said this in the post game too. Games like this can be useful, but you have to back it up now. It's like you have the chips in your possession. You gain some chips, actually, maybe even in defeat, but you got to go cash out now. You got to go get a win against UCLA. You got to get that 6th win and get that bowl conversation drought off the airwaves, where we're not talking about it anymore. So I think it was an important game for this program, possibly, if they now use it to take the next step and turn those into wins against lesser teams in November. So that's what we'll see. If you go and lose next Saturday, then yeah, I'd be the first to say it really diminishes and kind of just takes away from the effort or what you put out there against Ohio State. So you got to go forward with it now.
Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7, our guest. When you hear Rule, and Rule does it all the time, he speaks to his team through the media, that he's trying to get something, and he's admitted that he likes to pull triggers or push buttons. I think he said a couple of weeks ago. Can you remember another coach that does it quite like Rule does that?
Not so candidly, no. And it's not even close, really. I mean, he's different in that regard, and I thought he was exercising actually some caution with his words. You could tell he was kind of speaking slowly. He knows everything is really analyzed in this state. And he knows that Nebraska is a football program where there's people who are like, he still lost the game. Nebraska's got to win games. That's what it's all about. That said, I think it is important that, he had just come from the locker room with his team. And you talk about the process and having the right process all off season with your group and having a mindset like we're going to go onto this stage and not be scared. We're going to step right to them. And as a coach, his guys, you have to, I'm sure he was looking at all his guys right after that game and saying, you did that. Like you met that challenge, and now we just got to keep getting better at certain of the football aspects to get over the top here. But again, this was a game a lot of people thought was going to be really lopsided. They showed that they can be that kind of football team, and they aren't that team necessarily in Indiana. They just got to keep confirming that point now through November. They were 5-3 last year at this time. We all know how it went. There's reason to think it can be different this go around, but now this has to be the biggest week again, and you got to go do it again, and this time be on the right side of it against a team that obviously is not as talented as Ohio State.
Brian Christopherson of Husker 24/7 joining us on the Hunt Irrigation Talk and Text Line. BC, let's jump ahead to UCLA. They're coming off a bye week. Nebraska's coming off a really solid performance. They still don't win the game in another one-score loss, but obviously some momentum based on the happenings 7 days prior. What do you expect to see out of the Nebraska football program next Saturday in Lincoln against the Bruins?
Well, I hope the same intensity they had yesterday. And, we talked all offseason for 8 months. This can be a top 10 defense. And then our minds were scrambled after Indiana about who they are and okay, is that going to carry over? And they showed they still have those horses that are tough for, even Ohio State to deal with. Ohio State's O-line was overmatched for a lot of that game. And I know they have some injuries, but Nebraska was dominating with their run defense and really playing good football. So you just want to see that confidence carry into this week. And then, on the offensive side of the ball, there's some flaws that are just going to be there, but they've got to finish better. I mean, that's been sort of the thing. They've had these opportunities where you're on the doorstep, you get the ball on the 7-yard line, you don't push it in. We can get in there should have they thrown it at some point in that series of downs? It's a fair question, but bottom line is they had chances on 2 occasions there in the third quarter to really make more hay for really what they were earning. It should have been a quarter where you win it like 10-0, and they only won it 3-0 because they couldn't finish those drives. So I think they got to, finish some of those plays that have been out in front of them. Dylan, I know, is doing a lot of good stuff. There's just that one other extra throw he's got to make. I think he probably has one or two he wishes he had back. The one to Banks where he overshot him, and maybe to Barney, although they did score eventually on that one. So yeah, everybody's got to see that little piece that they could do a little bit better, not be satisfied that you played a good game and almost beat number 4, but now say, okay, let's go get the 6th win and use that as momentum after the second bye, because there can be a really optimistic feeling, I think, next weekend if they play well against UCLA, coupled with what they did at Ohio State. You've got the bowl eligibility thing solved, and then people, I think, will walk a little taller that week and be like, all right, let's see what happens the rest of the way. So this is a good opportunity in front of them right now.
DC, it's no secret the officiating in the Big Ten, college football in general, is not good.
It's really bad. And I can understand a little bit. Pass interference is probably the hardest call to make. Was that pass interference? Was that offensive, defensive? But spotting the ball 3 yards behind where it should have been spotted is just unacceptable. It's crazy that can't be fixed from the booth with some guy watching the monitor saying, hey, you screwed up. Mark the ball where it should have been marked. How hard is that?
Exactly. The officiating is a tough job on the field, but we have people upstairs who can correct that easily on one where you are off on your spot by 2 yards. And there's no exaggeration. Usually when someone says that, they're exaggerating, right? I mean, usually it's like, okay, they were half a yard off, something like that. That was legitimately 2 yards off on the Emmett Johnson first down, which, is 30 seconds off the clock in that time. Whether Nebraska is able to, have the urgency still and the plays to get in the end zone, I don't know. That's a big ask. It might have been the same score either way, but nonetheless, it's just, it is ridiculous. Like, I agree with you. There's certain calls that are more judgment calls and they're tougher. And obviously everybody's going to look at it through whatever lens, the color lens of their team. But there's no question that crew, you could go find 8 to 10 spots in that game, which were off, including the Jalen Lloyd run, which he got to the 1 yard line and you spotted at the 2. And obviously that extra yard would have been nice for Dante Dalzell, leaping over the top there. So, big spots. And just to show, I'll be fair about it, right after that, Will Howard runs a QB sneak. He gets it out to like the 5 and they mark it at the 3. It was just like they had no concept of where to put the football. And I hate talking about officiating. I try not to write about it very much, but it was a really bad day all around for that group.
I remember doing games for the Stars. That was always one of my favorite things to get in trouble for.
You never got fined by the USHL for those comments or anything?
I cannot confirm nor deny that the Stars organization ever got in trouble because of me.
I didn't mean to.
It's not a secret. I speak my mind. So there we go. I want to switch gears a little bit, go from the field to the hardwood. Let's talk basketball. Huskers had an exhibition game today. Discombobulated, what you'd expect. You're missing Andrew Morgan, but at the same time, Fred's out there throwing lineups together that more than likely won't play together to see who plays well in a setting with the crowd, etc. What were your takeaways from that game? And then ultimately your expectations for, let's just say, the first 10 games of the season for Nebraska basketball?
This isn't good radio. You ever walk away from something and you kind of like shoulder shrug, like, I don't know, that's kind of how I felt today. And that's only because of what you said in the question, which is well phrased. It's, he put out a bunch of different lineups. He played 9 guys, at least 15 minutes. Nobody played more than 24, I think. You do sort of pick up on the main rotation guys. I guess the thing that jumped out to me was Raleigh, who played 16 minutes. When he's on the floor, you just feel really comfortable with the ball in his hands, and it's kind of cool that Nebraska's got that veteran point guard where when he gets in the paint, as Fred said afterwards, you just expect good things to happen, whether it's him finishing or kicking it out, finding someone. I think they had a little bit of trouble today. They got kind of cluttered going against the defense they were facing. And it was a good pressure defense. It was a good little test. I know it was a Division II school, but they had played Toledo within 5 points. If you want to do a fun little score trail, they had played Toledo, who won the MAC the last 4 years, within 5 points. That Team Nebraska played today. And Toledo just played Michigan within 4 points. So obviously Nebraska's better than Michigan is what that comes out to.
It means that Final Four.
That's right.
So we know Nebraska's better than Michigan. We've already got that solved. But no, I thought it was a good kind of setup for what they're going to face next week, because I think that team will pressure them a little bit too. And that team hit Texas, Rio Grande Valley hit 25 threes in an exhibition game. So whenever you see that from a squad you're facing that you don't know much about, it puts you on edge a little bit, because they can have that night where if they're on and they hit a bunch of them from deep, it can get real interesting in a hurry. So the one thing that was really nice today was Nebraska played some good defense. They really did. Even in the first half, they forced some tough shots that kind of went down, and then they held their opponent to 17% shooting in the second half. So it is what it is. You don't know exactly where to place it, but I think it's a team that's still growing together. And the good thing is I think they've got some games early on where they can kind of figure out each other's play a little bit in game action and hopefully build from it.
Yeah, and they didn't play Andrew
Morgan today. He was injured, and Sam Whiteman didn't play.
It feels like they've got two guys in Jawan Gary and Bryce Williams they can rely on. And then you mentioned Raleigh Wooster. I think he's going to be a solid player for them. It feels like they've got some guys that when things are going really bad, they can either play defense or just settle the team down. I think you're right, Tom. And Connor Essegian, I think, can be, is he going to be K-Say? I don't know, but I think there's a feeling that he can get close to that with his accuracy. So he might not have the earmuff celebration or whatever, but if he can hit some shots. He was cold today. It was 0 for 4, but you know what? He was still plus 27, had the best plus minus of any Husker on the floor. So there's some things like that you kind of take away from it. Bear K was asked to play the 5 because Andrew Morgan was out, and he had 12 rebounds. And so I do think they have some versatile pieces. It's just now you got to get to that kind of that important part of like, okay, who are your 8 or 9 and how do they play off each other for full duration where they're all playing like 30 minutes? How does that work?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. One quick question on today's game. Does the 14 offensive rebounds that they gave up today concern you at all? Or was that just one where it's going to happen sometimes?
Yeah. Well, I think it's one where you make a note of it. And then you say, I don't know if that matters or not. Maybe it's just a product of the fact that you forced a lot of misses, especially in the second half. So there's more opportunities because while Nebraska shot 50% on their end each half, the other side shoots 17%. There's a lot of rebounds to be had. And also, as we to the first question, you have different lineups, guys kind of, maybe adjusting to each other. Andrew Morgan's not out there. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt for now. Nebraska did win points in the paint 42-12. So there's that piece of it. But yeah, you never love to see the offensive rebounds plus 11 to the other side, especially a Division II team. So I think it's worth a sentence in the story, and you just hope it's nothing because of the things mentioned.
Yeah, and it sounds like they played okay against Utah, which is a bigger team, more like a Big Ten team. We'll see. I mean, I'm with you. I just don't know. I think call me in about 6 games, and I'll have a much better idea. And probably not after the first couple, but I think they've got some pieces to work with for sure. Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. Thanks for the time, Brian. Always great stuff. Love reading your stuff at Husker 24.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. I enjoy being on.
Yep.
Thanks, BC.
BC, one of my favorites. Let's get to break. Come back with our picks of density. Have you been studying them?
I have. I heard they carry a lot of weight. So
I don't even want to know the numbers. I'm sure you figured out the numbers, the tally for the year, and who's up and who's behind, and who has to buy dinner for the rest of the year. I don't think it's me. My picks are terrible.
So we each had kind of a week off, and other people picked and filled in.
Yeah. Steve Hardesty did your picks last week.
Yeah.
But so they were so bad on both of us.
I threw out both of those weeks for each of us. But we both are currently sitting at 23 and 25 with one game that's a push. So we both suck.
We should do the old George Costanza, make the picks, and then do the opposite. That's the key.
And we'd be ahead then.
And we'd be ahead. Let's get the break. Back with more after this.
The following bulletin is paid for by Retired Americans PAC. Dateline Omaha. Election Day 2024. Nebraskans head to the polls. Hundreds of thousands of them rely on the Social Security and Medicare they earned. Do they know Senator Deb Fischer voted to raise the Social Security retirement age, cut benefits, and slash Medicare? That she voted against capping insulin costs at $35? Nebraska's seniors are asking, who will fight for our financial security and the benefits we paid for? Dan Osborne, veteran, works for a living, independent candidate for U.S. Senate. Unlike Deb Fischer, he's not funded by the drug lobby and big corporations. On November 5th, it's your turn to vote to protect Social Security and Medicare. Vote Dan Osborne. Retired Americans PAC paid and is responsible for the content of this advertisement. Retired Americans PAC'd up, not authorized by any candidate.
Bill Callahan days. I want to know what you think, Bishop. If you would have fired Kevin Conroy.
Carpets Direct is your number one source for all things providing free in-home estimates, unparalleled service, and a 2-year guarantee. Your home should be your sanctuary, and Carpets Direct has you covered.
Because for whatever reason,
luxury vinyl, hardwood, laminate, and sheet vinyl flooring. Carpets Direct is the ultimate flooring destination. Call or visit today, South 48th Street,
I want to see what he thought about the opening 10 games. Because what he's going to think about the season.
Save big money on your next project. Right now at Menards. Give your home an elegant look with Mastercraft finished hardwood mold. Available in 5 colors to save you time. Just cut and install for a simple upgrade to any room. Save big on all Mastercraft molding products. And don't forget to check out our weekly flyer at Menards.com for all the great deals happening now.
Save big money at Menards.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down, get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily
I watched that.
your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
He's so weird and everything. He's so awesome.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
The one where he drinks himself to death.
Right. Leaving Las Vegas.
Husker Rewind with Mike Melby and Tom Stevens. Old enough to remember Nebraska's national titles.
Oh, they don't have him yet. Look at Tommy Frazier. How many tackles can one man break?
It might be perfect. We only have 10 minutes left in the show. 9 minutes.
Young enough to remember what they had for lunch.
How about a nice, greasy pork sandwich served in a dirty ashtray?
On 1499.3 KLIN.
Kelly LeBrock, Weird Science, in case you're wondering. And who delivered the line? Bill Paxton.
Bill Paxton. That was I was trying to think of the cast of was Bill Paxton was in that. Kelly LeBrock.
Yep.
Who's basically just a supermodel, not an actress, right?
Yeah, and then Anthony Michael Hall.
Oh, Anthony Michael Hall.
Yeah.
From Pretty in Pink.
Yep.
And from other things.
Yeah. Welcome back to Husker Rewind. That is Tom Stevens. I'm Mike Melby. And we are hanging out in the studios here in the Momo Pizzeria studio here at KLIN. And I cannot tell you how much I love Momo's, other than tell you I love Momo's, dude.
I love Momo's.
Amazing.
What's your favorite thing at Momo's?
The cedar plank salmon.
I'm not a big salmon guy,
amazing.
but I love their pizza. I love their spaghetti and meatballs. I'm kind of predictable.
So their bruschetta, their mushroom fries, and their meatballs are 3 of the best appetizers in Lincoln, period, regardless of restaurant.
Oh, I mean, you don't have to convince me to go to Momo's.
Yeah,
I love momos. I mean, it's my thing. It's
So,
one of my things.
real quick before we get to the picks of density, I also want to make sure that we get in the Friedman Law injury report. Nebraska came out of the Ohio State game relatively healthy, although Dylan Raiola did go to the medical tent in the fourth quarter with what was diagnosed as a shoulder stinger.
That looked bad.
It did, but he returned to the game without missing any action. He will be healthy heading into next Saturday's game against
Let me
UCLA.
ask you this. If it turned out that Harburg is starting this Saturday,
Totally different game plan, but
are you confident that Nebraska
would win?
Yeah. Well, no, but I'm not confident they're going to win until they.
Yeah. Either way,
it's a put up or shut up here. You know.
Are you more or less confident if Harburg is starting?
Well,
Maybe
I'm not more confident, but I'm more confident that we're going to have a stellar run game,
right?
And that because you're going to have that extra guy that the defense has to account for.
I almost wouldn't mind it if they had. I mean, they keep saying they're going to have a package for Harburg. They never really have. It's usually just a player or two.
With where you're at now, just personal opinion, just throwing this out there. With where you're at now, I say Heinrich Harburg moving forward moves to tight end, and Danny Kalin is your backup QB for the remainder of the season because even if he plays in all 4 games, he could still redshirt.
Right. I
just throwing it out there.
Throw it out.
Okay. To finish up in Major League Baseball, the Dodgers' Shohei Ohtani suffered a subluxation of his left shoulder on a steal.
A subluxation?
Subluxation.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, I think it has something to do.
You just invented something. You made that up.
No. And I'm not really smart. It took me literally 90 minutes earlier today to subluxation.
Okay.
It took me 90 minutes earlier today practicing to figure out how to say it.
All right, let's
get to the picks. We're going to start with
It's time now for the picks of density.
Because it's a pick!
Wait a minute. It says density on here.
I'm your density.
Oh, I get it. Because your picks carry a lot of weight, right?
Ah, man. That's heavy.
All right, let's roll with it. The picks of density.
You forgot the intro, Mike.
I did.
Here it is.
Here it is.
I'm so excited about subluxation. Dallas Cowboys at San Francisco 49ers Sunday Night Football tonight. Niners favored by 5.5. I'm going to throw out that I'm going to take the Niners and give the points.
Boy, you are against your own Cowboys.
I hate my Cowboys right now.
You're as negative against the Cowboys
I am
as I am with the Vikings most years.
I'm actually more positive about the Vikings than you are about the Cowboys. I like the Cowboys for some reason. Neither team is great. They're both kind of disappointing so far this year, right?
Yeah.
I think 5.5. Whenever I pick against the Cowboys, I always lose. So I'm going to pick for the Cowboys.
Okay. All righty. Next game, Monday Night Football. Giants at the Steelers. Steelers favored by 5.5.
They're good on Monday Night Football, it feels like. I like Pitt, and I think they're good. And I also don't like the Giants. That's Robin Washington's team. They're terrible.
Yeah. I mean, even though what Mike McCarthy fired, I still am going to root against everybody else in the NFC East. So, yeah, I'm going to take Pitt in this one as well. Let's jump to next weekend in college football. Game of the year in the Big Ten, possibly. I don't know if it outdoes Oregon, Ohio State, but number 4, Ohio State at number 3, Penn State. The Buckeyes favored by 3.5.
I wonder, I haven't seen if is he out? Is Drew Aller out for this game? Because he was out Bo Pribula took over for Drew Aller and actually played really well in that game. But I don't know if Drew Aller is available. That would really affect the outcome in that game. Ohio State is 3.5
point favorite,
even though it's in Happy Valley.
Yep.
I thought Penn State looked really good against Wisconsin. I'm going to take Penn State.
I am going to take Ohio State. So maybe we'll untie our record with where we both.
Yeah, there we go.
Right
We
now.
got to go opposite.
Yep. So next is number 1 Oregon at Michigan.
I am
and Sherrod Moore. Oregon 15-point favorites.
I know they look pretty good. 39, I think they beat Illinois last week.
But 15 points at Michigan?
Yep.
Coming off a win. I mean, Michigan went to Michigan State and won. Not that that's a great win. But I like Michigan not to win the game, but to cover.
Okay. This is going well because I'm going to take Oregon. I think they're going to roll. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to light up that Wolverine defense, and I think the Oregon D is going to feast on the lack of a quarterback that Michigan has. I think they could stop the run.
They don't have a quarterback, that's for sure.
All righty, up next, Wisconsin at Iowa. Hawkeyes a 2.5-point favorite.
Wisconsin coming off that drilling to Penn State. It was a close game for quite a while. And then Iowa knocking out Northwestern. No problem. Was it 40-15, whatever it was? I like Iowa at home, 2.5-point favorite.
All righty. I actually like Iowa in that one as well. A little stunned at their offense, but they're playing well.
Caleb Johnson's very good.
Yeah, he definitely.
He's probably the best running back in college football.
Yeah. Number 2 overall rusher, I believe. Another top 20 matchup, number 18, Pitt at number 20, SMU. Mustangs favored by 7.
It's undefeated. I didn't realize Pitt is undefeated. So I'll take Pitt, even though it's on the road at SMU.
So you say Pitt is going to cover?
By the way,
cover the 7.
They destroyed Syracuse.
Oh, I watched that.
And Kyle McCord was awful.
Yeah,
he threw 5 picks. He threw 5 picks.
I don't know that he was as awful because I think 2 or 3 of those picks were tip balls. But the 3, I mean, I think it's an NCAA record. 3 pick sixes thrown by the same quarterback in a half.
Wow.
I mean, and he could have been Nebraska's quarterback.
Yeah, he could have been.
So speaking of Nebraska, UCLA at Nebraska, line opened at 10.5. Last I heard, it's moved
to 7.
In 7, or in some instances, I think Caesars had it at 9 before I came down here. I've heard others that had dropped it to 7 already. So there's not a lot of belief in Nebraska right now, even though they had a dominant. Well, not a dominant performance, even though they played a lot better against Ohio State than they did Indiana.
I'm going to take Nebraska plus, even if it were 10, I would take Nebraska.
Okay. I am going to go ahead and take the Bruins and the points.
Probably smart.
So we'll see how that all plays out.
There you go.
So picks of density wrapped up. We'll see how we do next week. And just for those that are trying to play along, they did NFL, not NFL, the Fox Big Noon show, the ESPN College Game Day stuff, and they have their expert gambler guy, and he comes on and he says, here's the parlay you should make, right?
Right.
Tom and I's picks are about that good. So
they're terrible.
The last 3 weeks I watched the Big Noon one with Fox, and their guy that had their 3 picks, he was wrong all 9 times. So,
wow, we're not that bad.
Yeah.
Seriously, if we would just flip our picks, and every time we made our pick, do the opposite, we'd be good.
We had 6 of 7 different 3 weeks ago, and we had the identical record.
That's crazy. So. That is crazy. In the NFL, the Patriots beat the Jets today. It was the Eagles over the Bengals.
Packers beat the Jaguars.
Lions win a big
14 over the Titans.
Yeah, the Falcons over the Buccaneers. Cardinals winning over the Dolphins. Browns actually winning a game over the Ravens. Texans over the Colts. And too many other scores to mention because we got a lead. Mike, good show.
We had Frank Christopherson from Husker 24/7, John Bishop from Unsportsmanlike Contact 1620 The Zone, and former Husker middle blocker Tanya Talkie.
Another show after hopefully a Husker win over UCLA next Sunday night. Every Sunday night, 5 to 7 for Mike Melby, Tom Stevens. We'll see you next week.
See you.
The real difference between Deb Fisher and independent Dan Osborne. Fisher's bought and paid for by special interests and corporations. Osborne's not.
Deb Fisher's had 12 years to do something about the border. She voted against the border. I think it's easier to do it when you have somebody because she takes money from Big Ag.
Securing the border, it takes a working man to get the job done.
Oh, it was a little.
Dan Osborne.
It was okay.
Retired career politician.